I'm Natalie Carter, 33 years old, and last month at my brother's engagement party, I watched my father stand in a ballroom full of people and announce that he was giving Ryan and his fiancée Madison my apartment as a wedding gift. The apartment I bought with my own money, the one I spent every weekend for 6 months renovating from the studs up. At first, I thought I'd misheard him. Then I saw Madison beaming and Ryan smirking. And that was when it hit me. My family had decided to take my home and didn't even bother to tell me first. Before I go any further, let me know where you're listening from in the comments, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been forced to choose between your peace and your family's expectations. 3 years ago, I signed the papers on a modest 2-bedroom condo just 20 minutes outside downtown Pittsburgh. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I was working full-time at a digital marketing firm, juggling weekend freelance gigs and skipping vacations just to save up every dime for that down payment. When I finally got the keys, my hands trembled with exhaustion and pride. I'd grown up in a house where kindness was taught, but not always practiced, where appearances mattered more than fairness, and where being the older child meant being expected to sacrifice without question. Growing up, my parents made it no secret that my brother Ryan came first. He got the new clothes while I patched up mine with fabric glue. He went to summer camp while I stayed behind to help Mom in the kitchen. When he turned 16, a shiny used car appeared in the driveway, complete with a big red bow. Dad took a picture like it was Christmas morning. I got a lecture on financial responsibility and a ride to the bus stop. I tried to make peace with it. I really did. I told myself it would get better once we were adults, that maybe one day they'd see me as more than the dependable one who didn't need anything after college. I threw myself into work, slowly climbing the ladder, and by the time I hit 30, I was finally ready to build something for myself. I didn't have family cheering from the sidelines, but I had grit, and that would have to be enough. The apartment was a blank slate when I moved in. Old appliances, scuffed flooring cabinets that groaned every time you opened them. But I saw what it could become. Every Friday night and Sunday afternoon, I was scraping tile, hauling lumber, or watching YouTube tutorials about grout and sealant. I learned how to install dimmers and rewire outlets. I cut and laid hardwood with my own 2 hands. When the renovations were finally done, I hosted a small gathering for friends. My parents came for exactly 27 minutes. Ryan showed up late, asked for a beer, and left early. I should have known then. I gave my parents a spare key that day, thinking maybe it would make them feel proud that I'd become someone they could rely on. "What if you lock yourself out?" Mom had said, "or need someone to water the plants while you're away?" She sounded so reasonable then, and I so badly wanted her approval. I didn't realize I was handing over more than a set of keys. Months passed. The apartment became my sanctuary. People asked for design advice. My coworkers stopped by after work just to see the space. Friends called it cozy, elegant, even brave. I thought maybe this was it. Maybe I had finally built something they couldn't take from me. But I was wrong, because when that envelope arrived, creamy cardstock silver foil, Ryan and Madison's names embossed across the front. I smiled and circled the date. I had no idea that the night of the party would be the night everything I'd built would be put up for display and handed away, like it was never mine at all. The day of Ryan's engagement party was warm and bright, not a cloud in the sky. I wore a navy cocktail dress I hadn't taken out in years, touched up my makeup in the car, and told myself just once that maybe this would be a good night. Maybe this time my family would remember I existed. I arrived at the country club a little after 5. The place was glowing with polished glassware and twinkling lights strung along the walls. I spotted my parents up near the front, Dad in a dark suit, Mom in a gown I'd never seen before. They hugged me quickly, their eyes already drifting past me to someone else. Inside the ballroom, Servers in white jackets circled with trays of champagne and tiny hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce. Strangers made polite conversation. Madison's family mingled like they owned the place. I stayed near the back, smiling when spoken to, sipping slowly from a glass I never wanted refilled. Ryan and Madison made their entrance about an hour in. She wore a sleeveless cream-colored dress and flashed her diamond ring every time she lifted her hand. Ryan looked more put together than I'd seen him in years, expensive suit hair trimmed just so the proud smile of a man who believed he had everything ahead of him. After dinner, once the last plate had been cleared, my father stood and tapped his glass. The room went quiet, save for a few chairs shifting. He began with a toast, talking about milestones and beginnings, how proud he was of Ryan's career and the life he was building. Madison, he said, was already like a daughter. I nodded along, waiting for it to be over. Then he paused. "Your mother and I want to give you both a special gift," he said, lifting his glass a little higher. "A home to begin your marriage in, Natalie's apartment." There was a beat of silence before applause erupted. My hand froze around my glass. The words hadn't registered at first. Then Madison clapped, smiling wide, and Ryan turned to me with that same crooked grin he used as a teenager when he knew he'd gotten away with something. I stayed in my seat. I didn't say anything. My chest felt tight, my throat dry. Around me, people murmured about how generous it was. My mother dabbed at her eyes. My father went on about the location, how beautifully it had been redone, like he was handing over a gift he'd chosen and paid for himself. I stood up slowly and made my way through the crowd toward my parents. "What was that?" I asked, keeping my voice low. "You're giving them my apartment." Mom smiled like she thought I was joking. "It's perfect for them, Natalie, and they're just starting out." "It's mine," I said again. "I bought it. I paid for the renovations." Dad frowned and gave me a look like I was causing a scene. "You can find another place." "Don't be selfish." I didn't answer. I couldn't. People were watching now, tilting their heads in curiosity, unsure whether to keep smiling or look away. I turned and left before dessert. In the car, the tears came fast. I sat with the engine off, fingers clenched around the steering wheel, trying to process what had just happened. My parents hadn't just crossed a line, they'd walked right past it without even glancing down. That night I got a message from Ryan. "Move out by Friday," it said. "We need time to settle in." It was Monday. I didn't respond. Instead, I went home and walked through each room, slowly touching the countertops, the cabinet doors, the dimmers I'd installed one Saturday afternoon when I couldn't afford a contractor. I ran my hand along the trim I'd painted by flashlight when the power went out. The apartment was quiet, still untouched mine. But now even the air felt invaded. I sent a message to my parents, short and polite. I reminded them the mortgage and title were in my name. I asked them to call me. They didn't. The next day, I called. It went straight to voicemail. When I tried again that evening, I found myself blocked. I emailed, nothing. I told myself it was just a delay, a misunderstanding, something that could be solved with a calm conversation. But by then I already knew better. The silence wasn't an accident. It was a tactic. I called Ashley that night, and for the first time I said the words out loud. They gave away my home like it was theirs. They didn't even ask. She didn't hesitate. "They can't do that," she said firmly. "That apartment is yours." I told her about Ryan's message, the deadline, the key I'd handed over a year ago for emergencies. "You're not leaving," she said. "You hear me? You're not going anywhere." I slept poorly that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the country club again. Madison clapping, Ryan smirking, Dad toasting. By morning, a new message had come in. "Madison wants to start measuring for furniture," Ryan wrote. "Make sure you leave the place clean. She has allergies." I stared at the screen for a long time before locking my phone and setting it face down. Later that day, I passed Susan in the hallway. She gave me a sympathetic look. "I thought you'd already moved out," she said. "Your brother was in the unit yesterday. He introduced himself to a few of us. Said he and his fiancée were moving in this weekend. I didn't say anything right away." My heart pounded. "He had a key," I asked. She nodded. "Used it like he owned the place." That evening I changed the locks. The locksmith didn't ask questions, just nodded along as I handed over the old keys. I stayed up late pacing the stripped-down living room, planning the next step. I didn't have a timeline. I didn't have answers. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty: I wasn't going to be pushed out of my own home. The next morning I sat at my kitchen table with the folder that held every document tied to the apartment. Mortgage papers, closing statements, renovation receipts, all in my name, every line signed by me. I spread them out like armor. The countertop beneath them had taken weeks to install. Quartz cool to the touch, still smooth after years of use. I looked around the apartment, taking in what I had built, the light fixtures I'd picked out one by one, the hardwood floors I'd saved up for the soft paint tones that made the rooms feel like mine. Everything I saw was a choice I had made. I tried again to call my parents, straight to voicemail. I tried emailing, nothing. By noon, it became clear they were intentionally ignoring me. I wasn't being left out by accident. I was being shut out on purpose. A new message from Ryan appeared on my phone. "Melissa wants to get started measuring the space. Make sure you're out by Friday." I didn't reply. Instead, I called Ashley. "They won't speak to me," I said, holding back tears. "They're pretending this is already done." Ashley's voice didn't waver. "Then you remind them it's not. This is your home." The next few hours moved slowly. I paced the apartment, checking locks, opening drawers, walking the rooms, as if someone might try to take them away before I could stop it. Another text came in. "Dad says if you're not out by Friday, he'll come help you pack." I stood by the window, phone in hand, the screen glowing against my palm. I didn't write back. That evening I ran into Mr. Peterson from next door. He wore his usual flannel shirt and carried a small bag of groceries. "Saw your brother the other day," he said casually. Seemed real confident about moving in. I nodded, unsure what to say. He was here measuring windows. Used a key. I thanked him and walked back inside, the air in my apartment suddenly feeling colder than before. I changed the locks that night. It was the first thing in days that felt like it belonged entirely to me. Sleep didn't come easily. My mind circled every moment from the party, every word said and unsaid. I thought of Madison smiling, Ryan nodding along my father's raised glass. The apartment was quiet, but not peaceful. The kind of quiet that comes before something breaks. Around 3 a.m, I turned on the lamp and sat on the edge of my bed. I opened my laptop and began looking for legal advice. Property rights, tenant protections, how to deal with unwanted access. I read until my eyes burned. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 3 years. My boss didn't ask questions. She just said to take what I needed. I found a law firm downtown with strong reviews and scheduled an appointment for later that afternoon. I gathered my documents, packed everything neatly into a folder, and left the apartment feeling both nervous and certain. Something had shifted. Michael Reynolds, the attorney, met me in a quiet office on the 20th floor of a glass building. He was calm and listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sat back in his chair. "You own the apartment outright?" he asked. I nodded. "They've told people they're moving in this weekend." Another nod. He tapped a pen against his notepad. "They have no legal standing. None. You're protected." The words didn't fix everything, but they gave me ground to stand on. He offered to draft a cease and desist letter and walked me through the next steps. I agreed. That night, I sat on the floor of my living room with a notebook and began writing down everything I had done to improve the apartment. Each item had a cost, a memory, a reason. Stainless steel appliances, recessed lighting, smart thermostat, custom shelving. None of it had been here when I moved in. It had all come from me. And now, piece by piece, I started planning how to take it all back. The next morning, I woke early and sat with a fresh legal pad spread across my lap, jotting down every upgrade I'd added since buying the apartment. One column listed each item: stainless steel fridge, recessed lighting, hardwood floors, smart thermostat. Another column held prices. Some I remembered clearly. Others I estimated from receipts tucked away in a file cabinet. Every line reminded me how long I'd worked to make this place feel like home. What had started as a blank slate with builder-grade everything was now warm, inviting, and entirely mine. Michael's cease and desist letter had gone out that morning by courier. He'd made sure it was clear and direct. The apartment was mine alone, and any attempt to access it without permission would be treated as trespassing. He said most people back off once they realize the legal path won't go in their favor. But something in my gut told me Ryan and my parents wouldn't let go that easily. They'd already told too many people about their plans. They'd made a public show of it. That kind of pride doesn't fold with one letter. I stood in the middle of the kitchen and turned slowly, scanning the cabinets, the backsplash, the lighting. If they were willing to take my home, then they didn't deserve the pieces of me I'd built into it. I opened a drawer and ran my fingers over the smooth interior, custom carpentry, soft close glides, maple wood. I made a decision then, quiet and firm. I'd take back what I could. Everything removable would go. Every dollar I'd put into making this place beautiful would be packed away, stored safely, and brought with me when I found a new home, one untouched by betrayal. I called a few companies that afternoon asking for quotes. Most were confused by what I was asking. "You want to remove your own renovations?" one of them asked. "Yes," I said, "every last one." The man on the other end didn't respond for a moment. "Well," he said finally, "that's unusual, but not impossible." I scheduled 3 consultations for the next day. Each team walked through the apartment taking notes and measurements. One crew stood out Brian and his men from a place called Elite Home Services. They didn't ask too many questions. Brian just nodded slowly as I explained, then said, "We can do it in 2 days. Clean, careful work. No damage to the structure." He handed me a quote before he left. The cost made me hesitate. $4,000 wasn't small, but the feeling of control it offered was worth every cent. I booked them for Thursday and Friday, the exact days Ryan had claimed for his move-in. There was something fitting about that. I arranged a storage unit nearby, climate-controlled and spacious enough to hold every appliance fixture and shelf I planned to remove. The woman at the front desk gave me a warm smile as she slid the lease across the counter. "Starting fresh?" she asked. "Something like that," I said. That evening I stopped by Susan's apartment to give her a heads up. "There'll be a bit of noise the next couple days," I said. "Some contractors coming in." She raised an eyebrow. "More renovations?" "Not exactly," I replied. "Undoing some things." Her face softened. "I saw your brother the other day. He was acting like the place already belonged to him." "That's part of the problem," I said. She nodded, understanding more than I expected. "If you need anything, you come knock," she said. "Some people need reminding they can't take what isn't theirs. I told Mr. Peterson, too." He leaned on his cane, listening quietly as I spoke. When I finished, he patted my arm gently and said, "Good for you, Natalie. Don't let them bulldoze over you." Thursday morning came early. Brian's truck pulled in at 7:30 sharp. He and his team walked in with floor coverings, toolkits, and padded wraps for transport. We started in the kitchen. The refrigerator came out first, unplugged, defrosted, and wheeled carefully onto a dolly. The range and dishwasher followed. Gas lines were capped, plumbing sealed. One man wrapped each appliance in thick blankets, while another loaded them into the truck. By mid-morning, the quartz countertops were being lifted away, the adhesive loosened by heat guns and careful hands. The cabinets came down one by one, each screw turned slowly to avoid splintering. Beneath it all, the bare drywall showed through a pale echo of what had once been there. I stood in the doorway and watched as my dream kitchen disappeared piece by piece. The bathroom came next. The double vanity, the glass shower doors, the heated flooring I'd chosen each of them myself. Now they were being boxed up and labeled, ready to be stored or used again somewhere else. It was hard to watch, but not as hard as I expected. Every item I removed was a step away from what they had tried to take. By the end of Thursday, the apartment was stripped of its shine. No more custom tile, no sleek countertops, no soft lighting, just walls and wires, pipes, and baseboards. I stood alone in the space, the echo of my footsteps following me from room to room. Friday morning they began lifting the hardwood planks, careful not to crack the tongue and groove edges. Every section was labeled for reinstallation. The recessed lights came out next, replaced with simple fixtures I'd kept in the storage closet. The smart thermostat, the doorbell camera, the speakers, I had added them all, and now I took them back. The window treatments came down last. When it was over, I walked the rooms again with Brian. "It's still livable," he said, "just not fancy." "That's what I wanted," I told him. "Thank you." He shook my hand and left. The apartment felt hollow without the warmth I'd built into it, but it also felt honest. I rolled out a borrowed air mattress on the bedroom floor and sat down listening to the quiet settle in. I stayed that night surrounded by blank walls and bare floors. Saturday would bring what they thought was theirs, what they believed they could walk into and claim. But they were about to find out just how wrong they'd been. Saturday morning came with sharp sunlight pushing through the bare windows. I'd been awake since 6, sitting on the edge of the air mattress with my hands wrapped around a warm mug of coffee. The rooms were still stripped down to their original bones. No soft lighting, no smart thermostat glowing on the wall, no cabinets or backsplash to catch the morning light, just blank surfaces and the quiet hum of pipes beneath the floor. I had dressed simply jeans, a cotton blouse, nothing flashy. I didn't want to look shaken. At exactly 10 o'clock, I heard voices outside the door. Ryan's first, then Madison's, and surprisingly both of my parents. The knock came hard and fast, 3 sharp raps that echoed through the empty space. I stood up slowly, walked over, and opened the door without a word. They filed in, all 4 of them, their steps slowing as their eyes adjusted to the reality in front of them. Madison stopped just past the doorway. Her face twisted in confusion. "Where is everything?" she said, her voice high and tight. "What did you do?" Ryan turned to me, his expression sour. "You tore the place apart. I removed my belongings," I said evenly. "Everything I paid for. Everything that was mine." My father's jaw tightened. "You destroyed the apartment." I shook my head. "No. I returned it to how it was before I spent $50,000 making it a home. This is the original condition. It's perfectly livable." Madison looked around helplessly. The exposed plumbing, the builder-grade light fixtures, the concrete subfloor. "You said it was renovated," she snapped, turning to my parents. "You promised." My mother glanced at my father, her face flushed. "It was," she murmured. "It used to be." Ryan pointed toward the empty living room. "You did this to spite us." I stayed calm. "I did this to protect what's mine. You announced plans to move in without my consent. I made sure there would be nothing left for you to claim." My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A message from Michael confirming the delivery of the legal documents. I held it up briefly. "In case there's any confusion, you should have all received the cease and desist letters yesterday. My name is the only one on the deed and mortgage. You have no right to this property." My mother's voice was quiet. "You brought in a lawyer." "Yes," I said. "I had to." Madison sank to the floor, shoulders hunched, mascara smudging beneath her eyes. What are we supposed to do now? We told everyone we'd be living here. The wedding's in 4 months. That's not my problem, I said softly. You made promises on something that wasn't yours. My father pulled out his phone. I'm calling your Uncle Richard. He's an attorney. He'll tell us what you did isn't legal. Feel free, I replied. But he'll tell you the same thing. I followed the law. He stepped into the hallway, muttering as he dialed. My mother lingered behind, eyes sweeping across the apartment like she didn't recognize it anymore. Natalie, she said, her voice low, please be reasonable. Ryan needs this place. So do I said. But somehow that never seemed to matter. She opened her mouth, but I kept going. You've always chosen Ryan, every single time, and I let it happen. I stayed quiet. I gave what I could. This time I'm keeping something for myself. Her lips pressed into a thin line. That's not fair. Isn't it? I asked. When have you ever put me first? The silence that followed felt heavier than anything in the room. My father returned a few minutes later, phone still in hand. Richard says you're within your rights, he said flatly. Legally, there's nothing we can do. Ryan turned red. You ruined everything, he spat. Our plans, our future. You didn't have to do this. You didn't have to try and take what wasn't yours, I said. You made this choice when you treated my home like a hand-me-down. The next hour dragged. There were more arguments, more guilt-tripping, more raised voices. At one point, Madison accused me of being cold-hearted. My father said I was selfish. My mother pleaded with me to see reason. But through it all, I didn't waver. Eventually, they gave up. Ryan slammed the door on his way out. The echo rattled the windows. I stood in the center of the empty living room and let the quiet settle around me again. What came next would bring more calls, more fallout, more distance than I'd ever experienced with my family. But in that moment, I knew I'd done what needed to be done. I had taken the first real step towards standing on my own terms. The following week brought silence at first. No messages, no calls, just space. I went back to work on Monday, moving through meetings and emails like nothing had happened. But in the quiet hours, early mornings, late evenings, the fallout began to surface. A voicemail from my cousin Amanda saying she'd heard something strange and wanted to check on me. A text from an old family friend asking if the rumors were true. Even a card from my Aunt Carol, short and simple, proud of you. About time, someone said no. The calls came next. Some from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years, others from family members I saw every Thanksgiving. A few were supportive, most were not. I was called selfish, cold, ungrateful. One uncle said I'd embarrassed the family. Another asked how I could do this to my own brother. I listened. I didn't argue. I let them say what they needed to say, then quietly blocked the numbers that needed blocking. Meanwhile, I stayed away from my parents. I read every message they sent, but I didn't respond. Some were angry, others tried to sound reasonable, a few were laced with guilt, but none of them apologized. None of them asked what I needed. They only asked me to undo what had already been done. Ryan and Madison found a place across town, a small 2-bedroom unit in a newer building with laminate floors and basic finishes. I didn't see it, but I heard about it through the family network. Madison's parents weren't happy. They'd expected a showpiece home, something they could talk about during wedding speeches and holiday dinners. Instead, they got an apartment with beige walls and thin carpeting. I kept my distance even when invited to a cousin's birthday party and a niece's baby shower. I wasn't ready to sit at a table with people who had cheered while my home was being handed away. I needed space, so I gave myself permission to have it. About 3 weeks after the confrontation, I met Ashley for dinner at a little Italian place we both liked. She asked how things were going, how I was sleeping if I was thinking about what came next. I told her the truth I didn't know. I didn't have a plan yet. The apartment was empty and quiet, but it still felt like mine. For now, that was enough. That night back in the apartment, I walked room to room again. The floors were still bare, the walls still plain. But there was a kind of clarity to it. No more pretending, no more hoping they'd change. It was just me and the space I had reclaimed. A few days later, I received a formal response from my father's attorney, my Uncle Richard. It was short and clipped, acknowledging the legal facts and requesting no further communication on the matter. I read it once, filed it away, and moved on. Then out of nowhere came a text from my mother. Just 5 words. "Can we meet for coffee?" I stared at it for a long time before replying. Where and when? We met at a small bakery halfway between our homes. She arrived 10 minutes early, already seated at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of her. I sat down across from her and waited. For a moment, she just looked at me. Then she spoke. "I owe you an apology," she said. "What we did was wrong. I didn't interrupt. I just listened." She told me how it started, how Ryan and Madison were talking about the cost of housing, how my father, proud and impulsive, decided my apartment would be the perfect gift, how she agreed, even knowing deep down that it would hurt me. "We thought you'd go along with it," she admitted. "You always have." I nodded. "You never asked." "I know," she said. "That was cowardly. I didn't want to hear you say no." We sat for nearly 2 hours. She didn't excuse her choices, but she explained them. My father had always favored Ryan, she said. She hadn't stopped him, not once, and that was her mistake. She told me she respected what I'd done, even if it made things messy. "You showed us something we should have seen a long time ago." When we stood to leave, she hugged me. It wasn't tight or tearful, just steady. We walked out side by side, quieter than we'd arrived. The next morning, I called my therapist and scheduled my first appointment in over a year. Whatever came next, I wanted to face it differently. A month passed before I stepped into another family gathering. It was my niece's birthday, held at my cousin's house, a backyard barbecue with folding tables, balloons, and kids running barefoot in the grass. I wasn't sure I'd go. I stood in my kitchen that morning, holding the invitation, debating whether it was worth it. But something in me had settled in the weeks since that coffee with my mother. I didn't feel the same weight I used to. I didn't feel the need to defend or explain. I just needed to show up as myself. I arrived a little after 2. My mother was already there, sitting with Carol and a few others near the patio. She gave me a small wave as I passed by, nothing too much, just enough to acknowledge the space we were still figuring out. Ryan wasn't there. Neither was my father. Someone mentioned they were visiting Madison's family that weekend. No one pressed me for details. A few people gave polite nods. Others avoided eye contact. But Carol greeted me with a smile and a hug. "You look well," she said. "Lighter." I smiled. "I feel lighter." Later that afternoon, as I helped carry a tray of cupcakes outside, I overheard 2 women talking near the side fence. They didn't see me standing nearby. One of them said, "I heard Natalie strip the whole place down. Took the floors, the lights, even the doors." The other laughed under her breath. Good for her. I would have done the same. They thought they could just take it. Some nerve. I waited a moment before stepping into view. Neither of them looked surprised. One gave a quick smile. "Happy birthday to your niece," she said, and walked away. That night back in my apartment, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around again. The space had stopped feeling empty. It just felt honest. I had taken back every piece they tried to take from me, and in doing that, I'd also taken back something else, my place in the story. By early fall, Ryan and Madison were married. I didn't attend the wedding. The invitation came in the mail, thick cardstock, embossed letters, the kind that costs more than the dress you wear to it. I put it in a drawer and never responded. My mother mentioned afterward that it was a small ceremony. Madison's parents hosted it at their lake house. "They seem happy," she said. I nodded and changed the subject. A few weeks later, my father called. It was the first time I'd heard his voice since the confrontation. He didn't apologize. He didn't even mention the apartment. He just asked if I was coming to Thanksgiving. I told him I hadn't decided yet. He said, "Well, think about it." Then he hung up. That was all. My therapist, Claire, helped me make sense of the tension that still lingered. She said sometimes healing means moving through the discomfort, not around it. Sometimes people won't admit they were wrong, but that doesn't mean you were wrong to stop them. I met with her every 2 weeks, working slowly through memories I hadn't touched in years. Childhood birthdays where Ryan blew out the candles on my cake. College move-in day when no one showed up. The little moments that stacked into a lifetime. During one of our sessions, Claire asked me what I wanted now. Not what I didn't want, what I actually wanted. I didn't have an answer right away. But a few days later, I started browsing home listings again. It took me a few weeks, but I found a townhouse about 15 minutes from my office with tall windows and a little fenced backyard. It wasn't fancy, but it was bright and open and quiet. I made an offer and moved in before the holidays. The bamboo floors were warm under my feet. The kitchen had maple cabinets and slate countertops. I unpacked slowly, one room at a time. No rush, no pressure. Just choosing what stayed and what didn't. I didn't reinstall everything I'd saved from the old apartment. Some of it I sold, some I donated, and some I simply let go. I picked new things, softer, colors, smaller pieces, more light. I planted rosemary in a pot on the back porch. I bought a lamp I didn't need just because I liked how it looked at dusk. Ashley came by one weekend and brought a bottle of wine. We sat on the back steps and watched the sun dip behind the trees. "It's peaceful here," she said. I nodded. "It finally feels like mine." Winter passed slowly that year. The holidays came and went without the usual noise. I spent Thanksgiving at Ashley's place, surrounded by people who knew the whole story and still welcomed me without hesitation. Christmas morning, I baked cinnamon rolls and ate them in my pajamas, with no pressure to smile or perform. There was no drama, no tension, just warmth and quiet, exactly what I needed. My mother reached out a few more times, small things, a photo of the dog they'd adopted, a recipe she thought I might like. I didn't reply to all of them, but I read each one. We had coffee again in February, and though we didn't rehash the past, there was something different in her voice, less rehearsed, more careful. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She simply showed up, and maybe for now that was enough. My father never spoke of the apartment again. We saw each other briefly at a family gathering in the spring. He nodded, I nodded back, and we left it there. There are things he may never admit. But I've learned that silence doesn't mean I have to stay quiet. I know what happened, and I know I stood my ground. Ryan and Madison settled into their new life. From what I hear, they're doing fine. The wedding photos went up on social media, filtered and polished with captions about love and new beginnings. I didn't feel bitter when I saw them. I felt distant, like watching a show I no longer had a part in and didn't miss. As for me, the townhouse became more than just a place to live. It became a symbol of what I reclaimed, not just property, but peace. I found joy in the ordinary again, painting the hallway a soft gray, planting herbs by the kitchen window, waking up without dread in my chest. My world felt smaller in the best way, simpler, real. There are moments I look back on and still feel the sting, the way they announced it like I didn't exist, the way my own name was treated like a footnote. But then I remember the look on Madison's face when she stepped into that gutted apartment, the way my mother blinked in silence as I laid out the truth, and I feel something close to closure. The lesson I carry with me now is simple boundaries are not walls, they're doors we choose to lock or open. We don't owe anyone access to what we've built, especially when they've tried to claim it as their own. Standing up for yourself doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's as quiet as changing your locks and refusing to leave. If you've ever been the one overlooked, the one expected to give without question, I hope you know it's never too late to say, "That's enough." Dignity is not something anyone else can grant you. It's something you claim quietly and firmly when you finally decide to stop handing away pieces of yourself. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, I'd love to know. Feel free to share your thoughts or experiences in the comments. And if you haven't already, you're welcome to subscribe for more stories about strength, clarity, and choosing yourself gently but completely.